and I will then address Arsjad with the questions that you have for him in the time in the second half of this webinar. So during the first part, just to give you a brief idea, what I'm intending to do is I want to talk to Arsjad about the economy in general, what's happening at the moment, how he sees the situation in particular for the manufacturing sector. After that, I want to ask him about KADIN programs currently, what KADIN is doing. We need to address, obviously, the question of vaccinations, the Gotong Royong scheme, that's important. Followed by the question of small, medium-sized enterprises and what KADIN is doing in that regard, because that's also of key concern for especially vulnerable communities. And finally, looking at international opportunities, since this is a cooperation with the ANU, and we are looking for integrating Indonesia in global value chains, we would like to have his perspective also on international opportunities for the Indonesian economy. Before we get started with the questions, would we invite other panelists to say a quick hello, maybe?
Yeah, we have Professor Halil here and Ibu Dona Gultom from CHIPS. Hi, Pak Hal. Hi, Ibu Dona. Welcome to this session.
Selamat siang dan selamat pagi kepada Pak Arsjad dan Rainer, dan terima kasih banyak atas kesediaan. Walaupun memang ini zaman luar biasa dan sibuk sekali juga. Terima kasih banyak dari Canberra.
Greetings to Pak and Ibu Dona.
Hai Pak, selamat datang Pak.
Yeah,
thank you so much Pak. Thank you so much. It's so grateful that you are now the speaker of our session of second session of IPD. So we really hopeful that this will be fruitful.
Yeah. I hope I can be a good speaker.
You are Pak. I already listened to you once. You are Pak. You will.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Ibu Dona is one of the board members in the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies, and Professor Halil needs no introduction in any program of the Indonesia project of the
Yeah. Terima kasih dan selamat pagi kepada Ibu Dona juga. Hi.
Hey, Pak Halil. Selamat pagi. Good morning. Good afternoon already in Australia. Anyway.
Yeah. Dan ini hari pertama lockdown di Canberra juga.
Yeah, wow. We heard that. A little warning, right?
Yeah, baru saja mulai.
Okay, let's venture into our conversation, Arsjad. So about the manufacturing sector in particular of the economy. We hear a lot, of course, about the problems in tourism, obviously, and in F&B, we are aware that the e-commerce, on the other hand, is obviously taking this as some sort of opportunity. But manufacturing, that was on the agenda of the president to revive the manufacturing sector. There was quite some initiative. But now during the pandemic, this is really hard, and manufacturing sector takes a hit. So how do you see this situation, Pak?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Rainer, again for for an Indonesia project to actually CHIPS to invite me to become speaker this morning. It's really an honor for me. And talking about the economy and talking about what's happening today, it is for me, it's a very challenging time. So. But at the beginning of the pandemic, the manufacturing sector was really hit due to the deceleration of the global supply chain, and also plummeted demand due to the lockdown in all the countries. And at that point of time, Indonesian manufacturing PMIs free fall. Actually, this is the beginning of the pandemic, which is from 45.3 points to 27.5. That's from March 2020 to April 2020. And then to revive the industrial sector, the government launches various pro-business policy at that point of time, exempting manufacturing operation, and then also fiscal incentive and all. So then it comes to the approaching to the second half of 2020. As we are accustomed to the new normal, they call it, right? The new reality, although I don't see that everyone is accepting the new reality today, but at that point of time, in the second half of 2020, that accustomed start to happen. So the manufacturing industry began to recover in Indonesia. For example, the chemical, medical industries grew at 8.45%. That was in the fourth quarter of 2020. Right? That's due to the increase of the domestic demands for soap, for hand sanitizers, disinfectants. So it's a different needs, but it's actually increasing that. And as the lockdown restriction lightened around the world, Indonesia manufacturing industry contributed 80% to exports. So the what's growth is actually the exports. That's driven by the basic metals, chemical goods, textile and garment, and paper and paper goods. So that's the story of Indonesia in the fourth quarter of 2020. Then by May 2021, what happened is that as the vaccines roll out, right, and then the COVID-19 cases actually decline, and that drove further the manufacturing of PMI at a record high at that point of time, which is 55.3 points. This indicating a very high confidence levels and optimism of the economy. So this actually gives a very pleasant, positive recovery mode so far, right? And very confidently, But then in the PMI dropped in actually July 2021, right? And this because of the disruption arising on the second wave of what we call the COVID-19, right? And this dampened the production and demands. So although the demand from the export actually is still very high, but then because what happened with this, and overall comes down. That's actually export orders were also affected, fell for the first time in 4 months, and a rate quicker than any drop in overall new situation that we had. And then by then, Indonesian manufacturers switched to actually lowering their employment levels in July. And that's affecting the industry. So now, the situation is that although all the numbers are very good, talking about Indonesian year-on-year, about 7% growth and 3%, this is just recently on the first half. But what's happening, this is something that we have been talking to the government and pushing the government, saying that because what is we see as KADIN is like a triangular is that yes, we believe that health is number one aspect, but there is two more aspects that we need to think about. One is the economy, and another one is social, right? Because this is all interrelated. And so this is the way we think is that yes, we need to focus on health, but at the same time, we need to move the wheels of the economy, because if not, it will affect actually the social situation in Indonesia. Because unlike maybe many other countries, in Indonesia there's a lot of informal employment, right? Or jobs, or so-called entrepreneurs, right? And also there is a lot of what we call daily wages, and many of our brothers and sisters have no savings. So this is a very difficult, challenging times. So that's why we push as KADIN to say, hey, let's move forward. So that's how we see it. But so we asked the government to actually open up the manufacturing, to be very frank with you, and we push it to say if as long as all the people, all the employees are vaccinated and they follow a high rule of health protocols, let's open the manufacturing, because they need this, not the businesses, right? But it could have a social aspect of things that we need to consider. So yeah, so I just want to take you a little bit of the story what happened in manufacturing, and from that period of time to actually today, and what's happening today as a company.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pak. That's a very clear picture that you draw. And when I then look at the numbers that you were already addressing, that PMI was at 53 points just in June. unemployment had dropped by 10 million compared to April 2020. So, I mean, there was an optimistic mood, but then this new outbreak happened. And at that time, you stepped in as the new chairman of KADIN. So that's why I'm saying this is a difficult moment to take over.
As you said, Rainer, in the beginning, you say, is it new or I don't know. I feel I've been for a while here. I think it's actually Rainer. So.
I can imagine that. But then obviously KADIN really needs to be really engaged in this. It requires a lot of private sector involvement in finding the solutions to this. So what are some of the solutions that KADIN is pushing for? You already mentioned that you're promoting the opening up of the manufacturing sector for those at least who have been vaccinated. But are there actual programs that you conduct? And I'm not yet talking about vaccination. That's another story. But other programs.
No, it's as I said, when I came in, there's this triangle that we need to take care of, right? Health issue, yes, number one. Economy and social aspect. And so with that, the programs that I began to actually initiate it is to have these three factors into the programs, right? So on health, we actually initiated what we call a movement. A movement, what we call as war against the pandemic. Right? Why it says war? Sometimes we say, why do you have to choose the word war? It has to have that. Why it is serious? We need to see that it is a very serious situation, and in which this is like I said, the 1945 when we actually at war at that point of time and wanting to have independence. So the spirit of oneness has to be there. And I say, like any Indonesian at that point of time, we only use bamboo, to fight at that point of time. Why we won? Because we won. So what happened today is in order for us to win, we have to do it. So we initiated what I call a launch the war against the pandemic. And this, I say there's a lot of battles we have to win, right? And sometimes we have to win and lose, but at the end, we have to win the war. So in the battles, just to say, the first battle is actually simply to say, making sure everyone is following the protocols, following the health protocols. Right? Simple, but it's a disciplined situation. It's protocols. Number two, we initiated what we call the vaccination programs, which actually you mentioned. We'll touch into that a deeper one, but actually there's two. This one program is a program that has been initiated by my friend Rosan, the previous chairman of KADIN. It's called Vaksinasi Gotong Royong, Vaksin Gotong Royong. But then I initiated another one which adds into this vaccine. So one is to buy the vaccine. That's when we help the government by where the private sectors buys the vaccine, so that actually reduce the government budget on spending of the vaccine, so they can actually spend more on other things, social or whatever it is, there's more other priorities. But at the same time, that's the main. And the second one I would say is the vaccination itself. So we help the government for the vaccination process because we help the government for the let's move forward. So the vaccine is two programs, two battles. One is to buy the vaccine. Number two is to do the vaccination. So that's. Then what happened on healthcare is when we see what's happening, one of the causes, you see the number of deaths. It's very high, very sad. Number of people dies. And we see this is what happened is because of oxygen. Right? So we were like very much trapped into like very needs of oxygen. So we step into that, right? We step in, we actually buys and get oxygen cylinders. We get the ISO tanks because in order to transport it, and some cycle tank to put it there. And then we actually built also what we call oxygen house. This means bringing the house or the so-called isolation center or semi-light hospitals near to the source of the oxygen, because that's one of the problems is the supply chain. So we bring it in there. So that's why we have this called the oxygen house that we have, which is near to the production of the oxygen. And furthermore, on that, we also, of course, get mass medical equipment, also medicines to help, because there was a interruption in the supply and of this. Right? So we step into that. Right? And what I'm very just much happy is that how quick the response is of everyone. All the businesses. They say, hey, we want to do this. Everyone just get together and just, yes, we commit. And that's, I see as a value of Indonesia called gotong royong, collaboration is the word, right? Gotong royong. And I see that, and that's so great, and to see that's why. And let's say from ISO tanks, I got guys from SK Hinigas. This is all the oil and gas, getting all the ISO tank converted. From the nickels manufacturing, getting the ISO tank going, and then also the oxygen cylinders, and then on the oxygen house, our e-commerce like Goto step in, say, we will support, and then on the oxygen, the production, the producer of that, Samadar, they say, we'll support on that, and then we need the land next to that, and there's a guy from Master Steel who owns the land there's. We will give the land, use it, right? And all this, and then also some guys from the private equity side, just thinking about financing, and the ventures capital guys come in and say, we want to bring in this, and you know what? We'll also try to fundraise more, right? And then Beni.com came in, Kita Bisa came in. So I see this movement. And I said, oh my, this is the thing that I'm very, I could say, happy in that way, Rainer. But this is what we say, the gotong royong situation that we are doing as KADIN and initiating this, and all of the businesses are actually joining in, and more are coming. And besides the health, we also touch on rice. We bought a lot of rice, right? So that, because we see that, and when there's a semi-lockdown, the problem is sometimes food, right? The food. So we have to make sure they get that. So then we supply that. That's from a lot of the big companies like Indofood, like Barito Pacific, from all these big guys, right? And they say, okay, and we supply. We give the rice to the army and the police because they are the front end and they are the one who gives. So it's not about pushing them, but giving them. We need to have this semi-lockdown, all this, but we give them the rights. So Rainer, that's at least the current thing that we are doing on health and also on social, still promoting that. But at the same time, if you talk about the economic situation, of course, as I say, we are pushing different various initiatives or that we ask from the government, because as I said in the very beginning, that three triangle has to be there in any policies that we make. So that maybe to touch on that.
Thank you, Pak. I wanted to ask the audience later to ask that question, but here's a question coming in right now that fits exactly to what we were just talking about. So I'm pulling that in already by Ibu Lydia Napitupulu. She's asking, Indonesia has all this demand, as you say, for oxygen and the filters and all of these things. So, and you said as the gotong royong initiative, everybody is trying to contribute. Are there regulations? Is there anything that you're addressing that stops the private sector or private initiative from actually being able to deliver this? Where do you see challenges, and how do we need to overcome this in the short term? Because right now there is a demand, right?
I mean, we talk about challenges, right? There's always a lot of challenges, but I always see things positively with positive energy. So with that is about if you don't ask, you don't know whether you will get it or not. So the thing I do is I just ask. I mean, and for PPKM in Java and Bali, as an example, the chair or the person in charge is part of the data or Menko Maritime Investment for the minister. I think it's very helpful. They make decisions, they push for things, right? And I'm happy. I'm part of the discussion meetings, right? I mean, bureaucracy is there, but at the end, we try to cut. make sure that this is more important than anything else. We're talking about humanitarian. Right? So with that, I think the government is very helpful. I would say that, and as I said, if you don't ask, you don't know. So you push for things, and so far, Rainer and Ibu, thank God, I think we are working quite well.
Thank you. Then let's shift the focus now to the vaccination program, actually. I mean, Gotong Royong has been in the news for various reasons. There was this individual one which was pulled back, but there's still, of course, the one where companies are stepping in to actually vaccinate their employees. If I look at the numbers from what I understand, there are 10 million doses that have already been acquired for the Gotong Royong program, about 3/4 from Sinovac, I think, and another quarter from Moderna. 20 million, but compared to the 330 million that have been acquired for the general vaccination programs in Indonesia. So there's much more demand, obviously. The vaccination rate stands at 8% of the population, more or less, of the target population, 6% of the total population. So a lot needs to be done. I mean, 6 or 8% is still very low. So please can help us a little, enlighten us. What is KADIN doing? Because I guess a lot of employees or employers are actually looking to that program to have access to the vaccination.
Yeah, I think this number one is that I need to clarify a little bit. The only vaccine that is part of the vaccine Gotong Royong is Sinopharm. So we have no involvement on Sinovac, and on the Moderna, it's actually not us. Moderna, it's not the Gotong Royong programs, but Moderna is the first batch that came in. Actually, was a gift from the US, right, to the Indonesian government, and that was particularly for the health workers. Right? And my understanding is about 4 million, if I'm not mistaken, doses that we got from the US. And if I'm not mistaken, the health minister said that, and I think is going to get a second 4 million from the US. That actually helped the health workers, especially. But so it's only Sinopharm. Right? But you need to what happened is of course this was initiated very, very early. By the previous chairman, Arsjad. And I think it was a very good initiative. It's how to be quicker, to be fast, and then at the same time be able to help the people or the government, directly people, because helping the budget of the government. I think it was a great situation. But during the process, of course, there's a few. I look at that and I say there's a lot of, in a way, obstacles that happened in the very beginning because of more of a supply situation, supply measure. Everybody was having a nervous about every country in the world, nervous about the situation. And so they try not to actually export the vaccine. So we have ordered, but the supply itself was quite slow of coming in at that point of time. Right? And that's how, and then at the same time, I think, you see, you have to, I just want to be clear. KADIN is not the organization that actually import the vaccine, not at all. KADIN is not the entity that actually has an agreement with the companies, not us. Right? KADIN is that helps to promote this, that help to promote the vaccine Gotong Royong. So the overall is not within our hands, basically. It's not on KADIN's side. And this is not trying to be facts, but this is, I'm just saying the factual situation. So we are the promoter. We are the one who is, you can say, in the front. But I just want to make sure and rest assured, not a single cent, whatever is actually involved in KADIN. We spend on costs to promote it. We spend on costs how to manage it, but nothing else, right? And so it's more of a cost rather than else, right? So it's more that what is KADIN. I just want to share with you, Rainer, here is the factual situation, right? But then when we look at it and it says there's some issues on the supply chain situation. There's an issues that we see on the overwhelm of contracts that's being signed, right? And so what we try to do, we push to the companies that's in charge to say that, hey guys, let's cut down on the format of data, make it simpler, make the process simpler, make the process, all this, and then the philosophy of, and you're talking about this, China, you have 1,000, let's say, you have to have an agreement. The agreement say is for 1,000, let's say there's 1,000 vaccines. There's 1,000 vaccines, and I said, okay, divide evenly, each one 10. So 1,000 you divide by 10, 100 contracts. If you are doing 100 contracts, how long will it take to actually push that out? Right? But if you start with, let's say have 10 contracts, but with 100 each, yeah, we're wrong, right? So it's about managing that so-called quota process and all those things, and then where allocation and everything. So here, I'm not to blame. I'm not trying to blame or anything like that. What I'm saying is that the overwhelming situation, perhaps, I could say that causes a lot of this. In the beginning was the supply constraint, and then the supply chain constraint, and then the contractual administration constraint, in which we again, we push it, we give solutions, we just, so that, because at the end of the day, we say, we need this, and we will not move.
Yeah.
It's not a time to blame who and whatever. It's to move it. It's move because we need it. So that's a factual situation in regards to vaccination.
Thank you, Pak. I think Ibu Donna wanted to ask you a question or make a comment. Ibu Donna? If maybe Ibu Donna is not.
Okay,
there
Pa.
You are.
All right. Sorry, there is unmute. Thank you, Pa. I'm listening to your all the presentation and how KADIN is working now to really support our government. So I know that KADIN is there as a partner of our government. So I know, I'm in Indonesia, I know how government is working, how private sectors are working. So we're working together. But just wonder, Pa, because I don't know how, I think all of us don't know how long this pandemic will last. We don't know. But it seems to me that it will take some more time to go. And I think we have to, the way I see. So as long as we, like you explained already, but how do we, Indonesia, try to approach to against this pandemic while also taking care of our economy and social as well. So I think this is the time for, also to think of that. Because you are with private sectors, allow me to just encourage or might be would like to see how you see this in the future, near future, because I think we have to live with it. I don't know, but that's how I see, because you cannot just hold on lockdown without doing anything. I think we know already what is this all about. Only we need to make sure that all equipment, all these health systems and vaccination roll out, making it effective. And I think we have to continue working as just new normal. I don't know, new normal or new lives. And I'm so interested in listening to you and saying that you already encourage the government to open the manufacturer. I think we have to live. Our economy has to boost as well. While we see how the economy is growing in last quarter and this quarter, I think for Indonesia is quite promising to continue going on. So how do you see, Pa? Because I see that during this more than 1 year that we live with this all online internet system and everything is digital. So I think, how do you see our industries and our private sectors? I'm so supporting you in saying that we have to open with the very strict protocol implementation, health implementation, and how do you really bring our, I think there must be shifting in our industries toward, if this has become new normals, we don't know how long this lasts. I think, what do you think, Pa? Because we hear already for industrial revolution, whether how do you see the Indonesia will go to that direction, Pa? I'm so interested to hear this. If KADIN really push, I see how you encourage the businesses in Indonesia to really work hand in hand with government, and I think you will be able to do this, Pa, to somehow bring them to the shifting modes of how we operate our manufacture later on. Maybe this kind of thinking coming up into my mind. Thank you,
Budona. Thank you, Budona. For those who have joined us a little later, Budona is one of the board members of the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies. Pak Arsjad, you want to comment or answer?
No, Ibu Dona, thank you. I mean, I think I'm aligned with you. I mean, as I said, that number one, this is the thing that we need to achieve. As you said, we are facing new normal, right? And we are a new normal. We have to accept the new reality. And the reality of this world is that we're going to live with this pandemic. That's first. So that our mindset is clear. We're going to live with this. So with that, then how do we be agile or adaptive to the situation that we are currently in? Right? So I'm with you. And that's why, I mean, even at the semi-lockdown of PPKM at the beginning of last month, I told the government, I shout out to say that, even though manufacturing, last time I said, okay, for essentials, for export-oriented, strategic manufacturing, open it 100%. And then, but of course, the indirect can be like 20%, right? But then vaccination, high protocol, high health protocol. Same thing then on regards to then on the other 52%, to attend to this. So I push for that. I push for malls. I push for the retailers because I say open the malls, open the retail, because the effect actually for the informal entrepreneurs is a lot. The effect is very positive effect, because if not, they cannot live. Right? So I'm with you, Bu, and I'm pushing with that. And just to talk about maybe if just when you touch on Industrial Revolution 4.0, you touch on perhaps if you don't mind, Rainer, I'll talk a little bit about what KADIN's programs is, right, and the thinking of KADIN. If you don't mind, I share with you guys on what KADIN is, right, the thinking of KADIN. So first, we said KADIN has to be inclusive and collaborative. Okay? Inclusive means that KADIN is the house for all businesses, whether it's large corporation, medium, small businesses, micro businesses. All of those are in the house of KADIN. Okay? That's inclusiveness. Inclusiveness also, we say, we are the platform for all industries. We are no favorite industries. All industries are belonging to KADIN. And so we have to fight for each of the industry, because the challenge of each industry are different. Then, talking about collaboration, so that KADIN has to be in a collaborative mode. Okay. This is from the Gotong Royong, and says, that value of Indonesia, Gotong Royong. And we look at, but also remind you that KADIN is the only statutory body in Indonesia. I mean, it was the birth by law, is KADIN, is that actually organizes for the business, entrepreneur and the business. Right? So this is the only one. So with that, in the law it stated that kemitraan, mitra means collaboration or working together with the government. So we have to be the strategic partner of the government. Strategic partner does not mean that we follow the government. No. Strategic partners is something that we become thinking strategically and we can give input to the governments. So I said, KADIN has to be like, and like in the US, I don't know in Australia, but there's a lobbyist firm, like lobbyist law, right? Indonesia has no lobbyist law or lobbyist firm. So the advocacy of what businesses are in KADIN. KADIN is the advocacy body. So it's our responsibility to that. And that's why we have to be in a strategic partnership with the government. But we also have to be in a strategic partnership with our workers, our laborers, because the unions is our partner. You cannot talk to them only like talking about wages. It's not about that. It's about how to develop it together. Because I will touch later on how the Industrial Revolution touches on that and reflects to what we have to do. And, then, more than that, is that what we KADIN wants to have collaboration besides the labor unions is also the political parties. Why? We are not trying to play politics, but remember that Indonesia-based political is the government is based on the political parties. And there's ministers from political party A, from political B and C, and then the governor, the regency leaders are from various political parties, and each political party has its own economic policies. And this is why we need to have a discussion. We need to touch with them. We need to talk with them. We need to see what we can influence, what can discussions so we understand and. They have to understand from the perspective of the private sectors too. Right? So that's part of our stakeholders. Besides that, KADIN is also to be the one who are this, taking care of the investors, because we love investors. Because I keep going around and say, hey, we need to change our mindset about nationalism. Because just stopping here, if there's two companies, both 100%. Let's say Indonesia, owned by Indonesia. This one is joint venture or so forth. Both companies, and then one company is helping the social impact of Indonesia, paying good taxes, right? And these are so-called non-Indonesian companies, owned ones. This one owned 100%, but no, they don't pay tax. They don't care for the social contribution they can do for the country, and the question is, which one is more nationalistic? So don't look at the shoulders, but look at the company and who's running the company. And that's part of it. And that's why the stakeholders, for us, all the investors, which basically in a way, sometimes we talk about, the chambers of commerce of Australia or the embassies and say, this is all our friends. And let's talk to KADIN. Because we need the capital. Because I say, with the current situation of the economy, when the wheel of the economy is stopping, we need to put oil into that. And the question is, what is the oil? It's money. And the only thing we have to do money is what? Print the money. You ask the central bank to just print money, and then you create a devaluation. Or you borrow money, or you bring in investment. We should bring in investment. And that's way to. Yeah, sorry, right now, I'm just talking about this one part.
No, very interesting, giving us the bigger picture, absolutely, on the stakeholders. It takes me directly to that other question that I had about your views on international cooperation, on trade, on foreign investment, because as much as Indonesia needs to grow domestically, obviously, with domestic resources, but the question is obviously to bring in also technology, to bring in the capital required, as you say, the oil for the machinery. In that light, I mean, what we have is we have a ratified comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Australia, IA-CEPA. Negotiations with the European Union is hard. It's not an easy topic, but nevertheless, it's one that is in progress and requires effort. So how do you see these free trade agreements? I mean, they come with their own problems, obviously. I mean, if you take a critical look at it, you see the bureaucracies around these things. But on the other hand, these are maybe the best bets and best options that we have for opening up. Do you see there a need or opportunities arising from these agreements?
Rainer, in any agreements, there's always a loser and a winners, and hopefully the agreements is balanced. We have both winners and both losers, right? And that's the idea of mutually benefiting for both countries. The way I see this, right, there's a lot of similarities between Australia and Indonesia in a way, and a good fit in between Indonesia and Australia. That's how I see an overall situation. Number one, we are next to each other. right? I mean, we are close, we are neighbors. You can say that the kangaroo is there and we have no kangaroo here, but I think we are very close. Our culture crosses most of the times. So I see first that what's the same situation. I think Australia have minerals, we have minerals. That's one thing. I think I'll go back to similarities. For example, in which on this one we actually will be able to to work on this together. Also because when we talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? What technology is one thing. Digitalization. Talk about electric vehicles. We talk about batteries, new batteries. We talk about lighter cars. We talk about, and all of this, right? You need minerals, the raw materials and minerals. And I think Australia, Indonesia, fortunately, God gave us a lot of this. Right? And so I see this Industrial Revolution 4.0 is actually benefiting countries like Australia and Indonesia. But how can we work together? That's one thing. Besides, there's other things that, and when we talk about export and imports, how do we fit in to each other's needs? And then that's how I see this, right? You start with needs, and then you fit in everybody at once, each other needs, and it fits in, and that's mutually benefiting. And I see that right now in this agreement, right? And so I really welcome, and I'm very much hope for all agreements, right? And of course, I think there's no perfect one all the time, but we need to see and what can improve it. We need to do things first and see as we go along, as it's operating. Sometimes when you do something that you imagine, you just sign a piece of paper and you've thought of everything. But at the end, sometimes the devil is in the details, right? When it comes to the process itself, then suddenly, oops, maybe there's things that we need to improve. But I see it as very positive, and I really welcome this, and I hope this will bring more closer between Indonesia and Australia. But the most important, you know what, Lenny? Is trust. And I think this is the part that we need to work on. Sometimes we take it for granted. We say we are close, we are neighbors. It's like, sorry to say, it's like a marriage. When you have a marriage, you try. If you don't actually water it, you put fertilizers, you put all this, right? Like planting. You take it for granted, suddenly you are apart.
Yeah.
So I think this is the part that we shouldn't get for granted, that yes, we've known each other many years, we've worked together, we have that, but we need to keep doing that so-called instilling our values, our relationship into
the confidence building, I guess, right? Trust and confidence. Thank you, Pak. We're having many questions coming in already, and many of them focus on the need to vaccinate and how the country needs to respond to this. But before we go to some of these questions, one question is about by Richard Borsuk is about the question of tax increases, because the government obviously has expanded the fiscal deficit. We see other countries already going into discussions what kind of taxes should be raised, and what is KADIN's position on that? Are you willing to take some of these tax increases, or do you resist? What's your position on this?
It's like this, right? We love and hate taxes, right? It depends what is the use of these taxes. And of course, as corporation, nevertheless, as businesses, we want to be as low as possible on taxes. But we need to balance what's the need of the country. And there's a lot of issues on taxes, and which I'm very much on top of it. We are working on it. We are discussing with the government. For example, as an example, just take one example, right? This is very sensitive. Carbon tax. And I said, no, we we support the ideas of the carbon that's been going towards a net zero emission. But then the thing is that we need to understand that we need to create the circular economy. We need to create that. We need to create the incentive. We need to create the trading. We need to have the overall circular economy. Because if you have just one without the other, it will not work. Right? Because you have to come to the reality also that, at the end of the day, that's a business for us. And so, but we also understand we want to live a better world. We want to live in a world where, the environment are clear, for our children, our grandchildren, to live. But then, how do we do this? This is the thing that needs to be addressed. Right? Mm-hmm. So that takes an example of that, right? On a standalone basis, I think we got to look at it. We have to create that. But the thing is, it's like this, right? Are we ready? How long does it take? It has to work. But the most important is the spirit of us of doing it, right? But again, there's some taxes saying that, lost companies will still tax, right? And these are we have to go back to say, what is tax work? The definition of tax. When you tax on something, it's like on profits, right? So, but if you're trying to start doing taxing on it's not on losses, I mean that's a big question, right? But then we understand. For example, no, because there's some companies are the books there, they call it what, cooking the books and all this stuff. Then the issue is not about the tax. The issue is about that. And then okay, let's make a so-called measures, right? To say, can we do a match? Same kind of services, same kind of industries, in other parts of the world or anywhere else. How much profit do they make? What's the normal industry margin, right? Can you look at it? And says, hey, guys, this is what's happening, right? So I say rather is how to do it rather than
okay.
to
yeah.
Okay, that's touching on some of the text. So we are KADIN and we are here. We are talking to the government. We are explaining to them about each of the. It's a lot of rumors, a lot of discussion on various taxes that's ongoing. Yeah. But sure, KADIN will be in a way balanced, but will be with. Of course, we are the house of the businesses, so we are for the business.
Right. Right. Which would naturally lead to a critical stance when it comes to tax increases, I guess. But I see your differentiated view on this in terms of what taxes are needed for and how they're being used. Let me summarize a few questions because we are coming to the end and slowly. But there are a few questions that really ask about the private sector involvement in the production of and distribution of vaccines in Indonesia. So there are international experiences where AstraZeneca was produced obviously domestically. And in Indonesia, it appears a little, at least from one question, that there is a parallel development. There is the government initiative and there is the private sector initiative. To what extent do you think can the government rely more on the private sector? So, increase the production domestically, but also leave the distribution, etc., more to the private sector because it might have a better reach, it might have more effective and efficient tools at hand.
Yes, no, Rainer, I as KADIN, we voice out about how we can participate as private sectors. Because at the end of the day, we are buying it for ourselves, basically, right? Actually, it is. We are buying the vaccine for ourselves because for our people. So there's no government involvement or any budget of the government. So it's best, why don't leave it to us? We buy it, we start, and all of us together buying this so-called vaccines, right? The most important is just not talking about business, right? The most important is for the health. And we just be transparent, be open, and say, this is the way it is. And for me, all vaccines are good, and people have choices. And why should you just keep it to one or two? Just open up. Like if they want to be, they're willing to pay for it. Sure. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying here not to ask the government not to be responsible in actually helping people who are not able to pay for the vaccines, right? I mean, they should be not trying to divide it, but I think the way I see it is that government should take care on people who are not able to pay for the vaccines. But people who are able to pay vaccines, I think it's only right. Why don't we, and then for us, we manage ourselves. So what I'm saying to you is, I am in agreement that we should be a private sector, waiting for ourselves and good for us, all. And I think the government is listening. But as you say, you have to manage. This is, what is important, and sometimes people do not think, is that there's various ways of voices. And we need to understand that on the social situation, we need to make sure that, number one, the first shot, second shot is gotten by all the people. I think that's important. So when we talk about maybe the third, right, so-called booster, or I don't know what they call it, that's something that maybe we can talk and say is that, okay, the private sector can take the positions of that, right? But again, we have to make sure that all people in Indonesia. So one of the things, is that what we are KADIN also is trying to do is also to bring everybody in, religious leaders, society leaders, and everyone to actually says, hey, because some are still resistant towards vaccination. Yeah. And now what we are doing also, Rainer, we are actually setting up what we call the mobile vaccination. We are going to launch all over 34 provinces in Indonesia, where we have KADIN in every provinces. We're going to launch it in certain capital first. We're going to launch this so-called mobile. So basically, instead of people coming into the centers, we are, bringing the vaccines to them. And that's one of the way I think we should also pursue. And with this also, we are doing a gotong with all the, the car, automotive industries to help with that. And we are launching that very soon in order to actually accelerate the vaccination.
Thank you, Pak Arsjad. We have an interesting discussion. We have an interesting lead of questions coming in, which indicated fantastic discussion about: is it a preference to develop and produce the vaccine domestically? Should we make it easier to get it into the country? What's the role of the state-owned enterprises? How can the private sector be strongly represented in this? We could discuss this for hours, but unfortunately we're coming to the end.
No, but I just want to say before that, Rainer, there's 4 pillars that we are in KADIN that we are promoting. The 4 pillars, right? The number one pillar is health. And when I talk about health, short-term is actually helping this one, but we want to be able to produce vaccines. I think in Indonesia, we need to do what we call a relook at the industry, on health industry, and how the private sectors can play. And this is an opportunity for the businesses. So first. Second is how we want to push an Indonesian economy. The national economy is by pushing the so-called regional economy, which is provincial economy and all. And that's what and also produce more local businesses, businessmen from the various, because we want to create decentralization of the economy in Indonesia. So that's the second pillars, and the third pillars is actually entrepreneurship and competencies, and how we want to produce more entrepreneurs, also social entrepreneurs, and at the same time, competency that's working also for the entrepreneurs, but also for the laborers, because we need to do the skilling, upskilling, and even actually push them to find jobs overseas. So those are things, just to wrap up what I'm just going to say, what KADIN is trying to do.
Thank you so much, Pak. It has been a pleasure having you in this webinar today, Pak Arsjad. Thank you so much for making the time and discussing these topics with us and with the audience.
I hope it helps, and I hope it actually good information to have. But thank you.
Certainly, Pak. And I mean, we had so many people registered. We usually have lots of people viewing it later on the YouTube platforms. So it really helps inspire the discussion that we have. Before I close, thank you. So thank you again, Pak Arsjad. Before I close, I just would like to say to the audience that you're all warmly invited to a large conference that the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies is holding on the 7th to 9th of September on governing the digital economy. We already have Johnny Plate, the Minister of Communication Informatics, as a speaker. We have Lutfi from Ministry of Trade already signed up as a speaker. And we have another 16 speakers confirmed. So this is going to be an extraordinary event. And I hope some of you would be able to join us in that. Find it, please, on our website. With this, I'm handing this back to Pa Acho. And I just like to say thank you again to the audience. Thank you for all those who asked questions. And I'm sorry, not all could have been answered, but we're trying to get back to you on some of these issues when we can. So thank you. Over to you, Pa Acho.
Thank you, Pa Rainer. Thank you, Pa Arsjad. And thanks for all the attendance. I also would like to announce another very important event in September, and that is the Indonesia Update, 2021 Indonesia Update. The title is In Sickness and in Health, Diagnosing Indonesia. And it is going to be convened by our colleagues here, Dr. Firman Witular at ANU and Dr. Aryan Utomo from Melbourne. And that would be 15th, 16th, and 17th of September next month. So stay tuned. And again, thank you so much for your participation today. And see you in the next series and events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Pa Arsjad.
Thank you.